Leading up to the Hell Is Us release, I tried to avoid any spoilers and discussions about the game. I loved the initial trailer and I wanted to go into it as blind as I could, and honestly, I think that was the best decision I could have made. After going back and watching the other trailers after I finished this game for the review, I would have thought this action-adventure game was way closer to a Souls-like than it actually is. Instead, Hell Is Us is a fantastic third-person action-adventure with little to no hand-holding and intense combat, and I loved it. However, in this video, we're going to be going over how Hell Is Us runs on the Steam Deck and whether it's good to play on the go. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. Your experience may be slightly better than what you're going to be seeing in this video due to this being recorded on a capture card. A copy of the game was provided to us by Nacon for review. When I first started playing Hell Is Us, I was worried that it wouldn't run on the Steam Deck. This is a beautiful game with larger open areas, and with the minimum specs being a bit on the higher side, like the GPU being a 1070, I had my doubts. However, now that I've played through the game, I can say it's surprisingly playable on the Steam Deck, but it will require some compromises. While there are a lot of areas that actually run very well and can hit up to 40 frames per second with no locks, there are many that drop it below. So, for stability purposes, I recommend keeping it at 30 frames per second. It will stay at and above 30 in almost every area, with some slight drops to 27 or 28 when running around in very crowded areas. Most areas though will stick to 30, with a lot of them keeping battery drain relatively low for a game like this, so around 14 watts to 17 watts on average. To keep this frame rate, we will have to keep the game running on low settings, but we can increase post-processing to medium and the 3D resolution scale to 45%. They are small changes, but it does slightly help with the blurriness on further away objects. I did try both FSR and XeSS upscaling to see if either of those would be better, but FSR was way too pixelated and shining when the camera moved around, and both upscalers were more intensive than just putting the 3D resolution scale down, and the visual trade-off was not as great. For bigger games like this, I would usually recommend setting textures higher, but with how high the RAM usage already is, I wouldn't change it. Textures usually influence how much RAM is used with the game, and with it regularly hitting around 12 to 13 gigabytes on low settings, I didn't want to chance it and try to increase it. I did try using FSR3 frame generation while in game, but I don't recommend it. Not only does it have difficulty gain to 60 frames per second, which I would consider necessary, but the camera movement feels extremely floaty. It doesn't have too much input lag, but it doesn't feel smoother at all. 40 frames per second without frame gen feels so much better than 45 frames per second. I also attempted to try lossless scaling using the Decky plugin, but it didn't work. Based on the performance with FSR frame gen on, I would not recommend using it. While in game, I noticed that some of the UI and text can be on the smaller side, especially for researched items or checking out our investigations. It isn't unreasonably small, but keeping the screen further away will make reading much harder. Everything else plays and feels great throughout the game though, so there shouldn't really be that many issues. With how big this game is, I would say expect around 2.5 to 3 hours of battery life because of the larger and more populated areas and some slight blurriness on further away objects. However, it's still very playable, looks decent, and is pretty awesome to experience on the go. The game does support 16:10 resolution, so you're not going to have any black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. There are cloud saves and controller support, and the game does have HDR, which will recognize the Steam Deck OLED screen. All in all, Hell Is Us works surprisingly well on the Steam Deck, and I was wonderfully happy with the experience. It does need those compromises to visuals and a 30 frames per second lock, but it generally plays well. I can see this being a great game to play on desktop and Steam Deck, with the desktop being played for, main quest lines and the deck being used more for exploration and secret hunting. Either way, it's very enjoyable on the go, and I recommend it. I played this game a lot when I was on my trip for Gamescom, so I can definitely say it's worth playing on a plane. Hell Is Us can be pre-purchased for $49.99 ahead of its September 4th release date, but you can get on Fanatical right now for $37.24, and the link to it is in the description. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.